All right, so I recently interviewed the makers of this documentary called Can't Look Away about the addiction to devices, and then I was talking to them about uh, that what I deal with is rather than consumers of what's made on devices, I deal with the creators and how depressed they get when things aren't working. So one of the things I've come up with, since a lot of my consulting clients talk to me about how to get over this depression when like things don't work and how they lose motivation, is I really do believe this theory that you should never, ever, ever look at your analytics unless you're going to change your behavior, because you're probably going to get depressed no matter what they are anyway. So I've been on this thing that like I'm almost trying to blind myself to the analytics so I could just focus on like, okay, if I'm going to look at average view duration or where this dropped off, am I going to actually go in and change the script? If not, I'm not reading it. I wanted to see what you guys' thoughts on this are.
I agree with this 1,000,000%.
Mm.
Because I've actually kind of been doing this for a while, like on YouTube specifically as a creator, right? I upload YouTube videos, and I'm also a music artist, so I look at like Spotify stats and all that for my own music. I used to. I had a video go up every minute, 2 minutes for the first hour. I'm like refreshing the YouTube Studio app to see what the stats are. I'm opening up the comments, replying to comments super quickly. And then same for Spotify. Drop a new song every hour for the entire launch weekend. I'm opening up Spotify for artists, looking at the stats. And then the thing is, I work on like I have Instagram and I have TikTok, and then I also work with a bunch of artists. So then I'm looking for their Spotify for artists. And I notice like every time I'm going to the bathroom, I'm like opening up these apps and checking out all my stats. And every time I like, I don't know, have some lull in my life, I'm looking up all these stats. And it's just kind of mentally exhausting and it's stressful. And it really just leads to more burnout. And so now I publish a video and I usually don't check, I check the stats once an hour or two later. And I'll sit down and that's when I'll reply to comments. Or drop a song on Spotify, I'll check the stats like one time on release day. And then if I'm optimizing campaigns, like you said, if I'm tweaking data, I'm like, oh, how's the song doing? Ooh, okay, that's bad. you know, go to my ad campaign, go look at like how my Submit Hub pitches go, like go look at all the things in that moment when I'm actively working on it, just to kind of save my mental health, really.
Yeah. And I also think that there's always this trade-off between like, what am I doing as an artist versus what am I doing to market the art, right? And you have to like kind of everyone has to kind of decide individually where they sit with that. Jesse, you made a post about this the other day about like, oh, like okay, like 8-minute long songs do work, but also, yeah, it's probably helpful to do a part one, part two of a song, but you
Yeah.
don't have to, right?
No.
And I think this is kind of like an iteration on that. Is like, yeah, like if you have an extended intro, should you just maybe make that an interlude and then just make the track?
Probably.
Again, for streaming, probably. But if you're like, no, like this is an integral whole and I want to present this as an integral whole, then guess what? Go for it, right? But I think that you have to just realize that like the art and the marketing are not always going to be like optimized for each other. But that does not mean that you can't market, that art, even if it's super weird or super niche. Like I work with probably the most niche bands of anyone on this podcast. And like,
What?
well, like I do like a lot more like harsh noise stuff than you.
More niche is technically defined by phylums. I think we're all working on pretty low down phylums of bands at times.
But okay, well, I guess what I'm saying is like I work on like very abrasive, weird music a lot of the
That
time.
now that's correct.
Okay. So like I work on like very abrasive, weird music, and we're still finding ways to market it even within that like very alienating gate kept world. And there's always ways. It's just like you're closing doors on yourself to some extent. And you just have to realize that, yeah, you're closing doors on yourself. Like ultimately, okay, you're not going to have any clean singing. It's only going to be death growls. Okay, that closes a lot of doors. Okay, you're not going to have any video content, just photos. That closes a lot of doors. Okay, you're going to be totally anonymous. Okay, we're starting to close a lot of doors. You know what I mean? There's still things you can do, like You know,
I
obviously
I
there's
metaphorically compare it to chopping off limbs, that there's still people who've, like, climbed Mount Everest without a leg, but it sure
yeah,
makes it a lot fucking harder.
exactly. But like there's so obsessing over the stats, especially if you're just like, no, I just have my artistic vision. I'm just gonna do my artistic vision. You're just gonna be depressed because it's like, yeah, like sorry.
Yeah, a mental health thing I personally do too is, Friday at 6 o'clock is the only time I read analytics, because
Hmm.
right after that, I'm guaranteed that I'm probably gonna go do something I enjoy a lot and not care anymore. So that if I've been, there, and even to be honest with you, it's funny, like, it's a thing I talk about a lot, that right now we're in some of the slowest weeks of the internet. And when I looked at my Instagram analytics today, I was like, oh, we're not doing good. And my YouTube, oh, we're not doing good. And
But
like,
like
those were things I didn't even want to look at. I just like casually saw them while I was looking, because they also don't let you hide them. But I try to only do it on Friday night.
I think there's a really important fact that you can influence stats
Mhm.
a lot by what you do, right? But there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't control. And like there's something to be said about just putting your head down and getting to work and just putting the blinders on and like doing it no matter what. There's,
yeah,
I think the quotes from Russell Brunson, so maybe
Mhm.
maybe not something
our
a lot of
king.
people here were like,
It's not
but
my king. I hate that guy.
but Russell Brunson, talked about how when he first launched his podcast, he filmed like 150 episodes before he even looked at the analytics. And
Mm.
then at that point, he realized for the first like 50 episodes, he had less than 10 listeners. And he's like, honestly, if I looked at the stats, I would have quit. But he's like, it was just something I did. And I didn't care what happened. I just fucking did it. Like, this is what I do, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to stick with the plan. And that's probably a little too extreme. But I think just you have to have some mentality of that, because the stats can kind of ruin your game and make you
Mhm.
want to stop sometimes.
No, I was thinking about this actually this week. I was thinking about how when I started Bacon Spits like 7 years ago, the stats on Instagram were like nowhere near as advanced. Like
Mhm.
you could like see views if you looked for it. And and likes. And then it was just like it was a lot easier to just kind of do what you're saying, like just keep creating and not really think about it until it finally hits, you know.
I didn't know you've been doing bacon bits for 7 years. Damn.
I think it is interesting though, like with that Russell Brunson thing, because a thing I've been very, very on lately, and like I've been doing a lot of tough love with my consulting clients on it, is like a lot of time the answer really is of like why something's not going well for them is that they need to create and learn lessons more. And I think that create and learn lessons more is actually a balance of that you need to create, but then maybe once every week or two we got to go in. What are the AVDs like? Like what is actually working? Are you getting to a hook fast enough? Can you get better at color correction so that you look better on it? And pretty privilege allows you to excel more. Like creating more is probably the answer most of the time.
And this is the thing, right? Is that creating content, any creative act, it's like songwriting. We all know Grammy winning songwriters. And I would say that the bulk of the
Not
Grammy
the mark I would use of a good songwriter, if I'm being
Okay,
honest.
okay, thank you, Jesse.
Mhm.
We all
Well,
know
we all know
extremely
Grammy winning songwriters, and we know people who write good music.
yes.
Yeah.
And those
Okay.
aren't always the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Now that the peanut gallery is giving me my feedback, we all know
Yeah.
really good
Listen,
professional
you just looked at your analytics of humans right there.
we all know really good professional songwriters. I would say for the bulk of those professional songwriters, they are writing music every single day, whether they like it or not. And that
Yeah.
is and every single one of them will tell you that is what makes me a good songwriter is I work
Yeah.
on this every single day, right? It's the exact same thing with any other creative activity. So that could be podcasts, but it's also creating fucking TikTok videos. Like you don't get better at creating TikTok videos that market your music by only making one every 2 weeks or only making one when you feel inspired. You get better at making little TikTok videos every goddamn day or working on them
Yeah.
every goddamn day. And that doesn't mean you have to post every single one. Those songwriters we're talking about who write every day, they do not release every song at all, right? They would probably tell you the majority of their songs are not good, but
Yeah.
they have to just work through it. And it's the same with content creation is you just have to work through it and it sucks. But if you're dedicating 15, 20 minutes a day to it, very quickly you start to realize not just like what works and what doesn't work, but also, and I think this is really important for a lot of people, you realize what makes your process easier. What is the content you can create that is easier for you to do? And I think that's really, really key, is to understand not just what works, but what can you consistently, feasibly do that doesn't make you hate yourself.
Well said.
But no, but am I wrong? Like you, but I'm
No,
No,
but I'm
no,
right.
you're not wrong.
100%. Like from someone from the content creation side and the music creator side, 110%. Like that is, and every successful artist I know too, they none of them are like especially talented. They just worked their ass off and did the grind every day. Whether it was their content that popped them off, or they're really good songwriters. It's just like you don't get good at things by not doing the thing. You got to do the thing to get good at the thing.